Google Plus and YouTube.
Live! It's live! Live! We're doing it live!
Yeah.
Are you guys watching Penny Dreadful?
And as
No.
always, I can't keep my people quiet during our little intro, which is fine. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to SpecFicMedia.com presents Beyond the Wall, a Game of Thrones podcast. It is June 4th, 2014, and we're here tonight to talk about Season 4, Episode 8, The Mountain and the Viper. A little follow-up on the last couple weeks. Recently, we released the audio podcast from our Episode 7 reaction show, which we recorded the Sunday night right after Episode 7. Then the following Sunday night, we recorded did our live show at Balticon, the week off for Game of Thrones. We are releasing that audio in our podcast feed, so if you're watching live, go on over to SpecFicMedia.com tomorrow. We'll be posting it later tonight, and you'll be able to listen to the live show audio there.
Mm-hmm. Don't want to miss that one. You won't be caught up to listen to it.
Not only did we have Nutty's notes from Episode 7, since she wasn't on the reaction show, we had some internal discussion and then some Q&A from the audience there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we would just wanted to take a moment to thank everybody that came out and watched the show. We certainly hope that we'll be able to go back next year for our 4th annual live show at Balticon, live Beyond the Wall. One item that we didn't get to during our live show that we were going to do, we had we're having a little contest internally, and I'm actually going to open it up to the fans. And after I explain it, you'll understand it can be very spoiler heavy, so if you're watching live, do not post in the Q&A what your guess is once I explain what it is. Send an email to me at btw@specficmedia.com with your guess to the following question. What do you think the final scene is going to be in Season 4, Episode 10? And I don't just mean like the last, big thing that happens, but what is the last thing that happens before fade to black, music rises, credits roll?
Literally the last shot.
The last shot, the last image, for example, Episode 1 was, non-burnt Daenerys with dragons crawling around her. Season 1, sorry. Season 2 was White Walker hissing near Sam, which I don't even want to get into why we have problems with that now at the end of Season 4. Season 3 was Dany being carried around in the mosh pit after the, taking of young Kai. That was what it was? Yeah. So, what do you think? The end of Episode 10, what that last shot is going to be. Again, send to btw@specficmedia.com. In Episode 10, we'll discuss who got it right, if any of us gets it right. If we pick something that did happen but wasn't the final shot, we'll say, okay, well, we were close here. But if it's something that just doesn't happen, and obviously it's something we think is going to happen in Season 5, they just didn't get to it, we were not going to talk about that, of course, because that would be spoilers.
I have a proposal, just to make it more fun for people, because obviously people who have read the books have an advantage in that we know some of the things that are likely to happen as opposed to just being totally at sea. So
I like where you're going.
We should have the people who have not read the books. I don't know if we need to have everybody necessarily separate out, but maybe we should have like an award for being the closest to getting it exactly right, but then also which one do we wish it would have been, because that would have been awesome.
Yes.
Even if it was a different story.
If you do send in a guess on what you think that final shot will be before it fades to black, put in your email what you think it's going to be and if you've read the books or not. And we'll trust you on that, and we'll talk about
honor system.
We'll talk about what people guessed in Episode 10 of our show. Tim Dodge says, "Greetings, mountain people." Yes, at least we are still alive if we're mountain people, I guess.
Yeah.
Or are we the mountain clans?
I don't know. Oberon's performance was mind-blowing.
Oh!
So, yeah, the Mountain and the Viper.
Like that again.
Yeah, definitely a graphic end to a something that a lot of us knew was coming, but definitely how they handled it was, quite
brutal.
Yeah, brutal. Yeah. Viv is not here tonight, but everybody else is. Hi, Chooch. How are you?
Hey, excellent.
Good job. And Christiana, good to see you.
Yes, I'm doing great. Space Casey Season 2 available now. SpaceCasey.com.
Episode 3 just released, right?
Well, on Tuesday. Yeah, so.
On Tuesday. Very good. And Nutty, how are you?
I am doing wonderfully.
Glad to see you. I haven't seen you since Balticon was over.
PG after Balticon. This is a first.
There we go. That's good. Skip the general views on it. We'll get to stuff at the end. Oh God, the jokes have already started. Mike McCauley says my eyes hurt. So yeah. So we'll skip our general impressions. We'll get to that as we go through, I'm sure. So we started the episode in Molestown, and got to see the reappearance of the nasty. Like they say, the girls in Molestown, not quite the prettiest or the most desirable women, I guess you could say. Don't know what the lady's name was, but belching, the Bear in the Maiden Fair. Did you recognize the Bear in the Maiden Fair in the belching, Nutty?
We had a 50-50 chance, so
yeah. That's
only two songs.
One or two. Once you knew one was.
I feel like it was 100% intentional that her belching sounded nothing like either song, and that yet those were the two songs that he guessed. I feel like that was absolutely on purpose and a direct response to people complaining that those are the only two songs in Westeros.
Yeah, I think I agree. I mean, we've had the whole idea of the meta jokes in the show, like Olenna talking about if I walk down in these gardens one more time, I'm going to throw myself off a cliff or whatever she said, and Daenerys giving her speeches where she's just repeating stuff. Oh, I'm not really going to Westeros. I've captured this city and I've freed the slaves here, and now I'm here to free the slaves. So, I think that, but I also think that it just didn't work very well. I thought that was just sort of a...
I agree. I would rather them just go ahead and come up with some new songs instead of making jokes about how they only have two.
Either that, or if you're going to make a belching joke about, at least make it sound somewhat like either of the songs instead of,
Well, and we have actually had a little bit of a third song. We had the Sam singing a couple of verses about the Seven. How they all love the little children.
Yes, and there are more songs referenced in the books.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Sheriff Bullock says my mother is from Molestown, so I'm sorry about that. Sheriff.
Right.
Yeah, sorry your mother's from Molestown.
The Bear in the Maiden Fair?
And Chooch, do we have a new tongue color this evening?
Not new.
Greenish.
Greenish. There you go. The red and the blue were a little more clear.
More vivid.
But yeah.
You look like a warlock.
There you go. Tim says he's already sent his email. He'll be disappointed, very disappointed if he's not right. So, and,
hopefully you are.
Yeah. If it's what I want it to be, then yes, I will root for you to be right. If you're not, if it doesn't match mine, then I hope you're wrong. No.
Mine totally matches PG's now, by the way.
Yes.
I think mine is probably the same, actually, too. Although I think, given that I think we all suspect that we're probably going to guess the same thing, what we need to do is be as specific as possible in order to distinguish our guesses.
Well,
not just a general statement, but as specific as possible.
I've gotten everybody's, but well, you told me in the car that when we were coming back from lunch, we sort of discussed this. So I have yours there. Nutty sent me hers, and then I said, well, since you told me yours, I will tell you mine. Since you showed me yours, I'll show you.
Mine was like half of his, and
Yes.
then he went.
And then I said, well, this is what I wanted to be. And she said, oh, I changed mine. I wanted to be that. And then she sent me his, and
Which is probably nowhere near the realm of anything.
Who
Wild
knows?
ass guess.
They could be. You never know. If someone is watching for the first time, Chooch is the unspoiled, as it says in his lower third there, has read the first book, but and you are muted, I think, or something. I'm not hearing you anymore.
Oh,
Daggone
I was gonna say,
pedals.
it's kind of like an Unsullied, but I still have balls.
Do you though?
Let's
We all
jump
wonder
ahead.
what's under your loincloth.
So let's jump ahead since you brought that up. So does is it ever established in the book whether everything is taken from the Unsullied or just the how does she put it, the pillar and
Pillar and the Stones.
Yeah.
the stones?
I assumed that they don't take both stones simply because they're
Or
big
both
guys, they're not a
stones, yes, but
testosterone.
well, I would think both stones taken, but somehow some pillar has to be there for
Yeah.
peeing, if nothing else.
Well, like,
But,
I mean, it's not that that's like an impossible thing to
Yeah.
manage. We, as we've discussed in the past with Varys, for example. But that
Yeah.
said, if you're going to have a whole bunch of soldiers marching on the road, certainly just for sanitation purposes, it's a lot simpler. Yeah, but I don't know. At the same time that I don't think it's been confirmed, or at least I don't recall that it has, it seems like something that in this world of the free cities and all of that, like, it would probably be easy to find out. Like, it's not even a question of like, oh, you have to ask an Unsullied and they would do it because they're Unsullied and all that. It's more just like you got 8,000 of them just walking around. I mean, and they're bathing in the river. I mean, I think you figure it out at some point.
Yeah, and the fact that Masandi says I don't know, sort of, I was like, okay, you know, I can understand maybe Danny not knowing, growing up in that part of the world or whatever, but anyway, Beefhead says that it was established in the books, but since that's sort of a question out there, let's not answer it in the Q&A, since maybe they're gonna have some sort of love thing going on there, and maybe we'll learn later whether he has anything.
One thing I want to say is, either way, I think it was really naive of Danny to assume that the castration automatically means that he would have no interest at all.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I mean, especially just given that it's one thing to say that when they were really in the extremely strict Unsullied discipline because they were slaves, if they had just this training to never consider or give any weight to anything that they might want because they're so depersonalized in that condition. But they're not like that anymore. They've been given freedom. They've been given permission to choose their own names. They've been told that they can make their own decisions. And why at that point would that not potentially start to allow them to think some thoughts they might have not permitted themselves otherwise?
Right. So, but let's jump back over to Molestown, since we sort of have a segue. Since the nasty-looking Belcher makes fun of the guy's genitals, the guy who either guessed the song right or couldn't guess the song right, whichever one that was. She ends up walking into the laundry and giving Gilly a hard time about the baby making noise. Another
Baby foreshadowing.
sort of continuing the threat that she sort of started in the earlier episode, where obviously she doesn't like Gilly for being a wildling, and
I liked that. I liked Gilly's attitude in that scene, because on the one hand, it's clear there's a little bit of, look, I don't want any trouble. You just leave me alone. I'll leave you alone. We don't have to do this. Let's not waste the breath. But then when provoked, even at like an idle threat about, the baby, it's just kind of like, listen, I'm not going to put up with you saying anything remotely like that, much less even thinking about actually doing it. So you said it to get a rise out of me. Mission accomplished. Don't do that anymore. So I liked that she was really willing to stand up for herself there.
Mama Bear.
Well, and Gilly is different from so many of Craster's wives because she stood up for herself from the get-go. I mean, the fact that she went to Sam was huge. So I agree. I completely love that. She's like, yeah, whatever. Oh, no, you're not talking about my baby.
Because if we think about, let's think about Craster's other wives, like the ones left behind after the mutineers were killed. On the one hand, you could say, well, they decided they didn't need a man at all. They're just going to go their own way. And, Gilly had asked for help. But at the same time, there's also, we remember when the baby boy was born, Craster's last son, most of the other girls there were all creepy and cult-like about this, all creepy and cult-like about, have to give the sacrifice and all of that. Whereas Gilly was the one that said, no, this is my son, my baby boy. I don't want him to give him to the White Walkers. I want to save him. And so that's kind of been but she was of her own mind in that regard where her sister wives were not.
Right. Gilly has a little bit, or she might have said more, but then she hears the owls hooting,
Before
whistling.
Before we go there, Christiana just reminded me of something. Remember back when the last of Craster's boys was born, and we got to see, the Fortress of Solitude and everything, and Jor-El turn him into a White Walker? Does that mean that little Sam is Kyle? The only boy saved from Krypton?
Wow, man.
Well,
maybe stretching, but we'll say yes. Because maybe he will be
piece.
Yes.
As much as I like exploring the idea, I feel like it needs work.
Or hope.
The analogy.
All right.
All right, back to the actual show.
Yeah. So the whistles in the air that she hears. Did anybody have a problem with her immediately understanding what that was?
To me, it was sort of the difference between someone who knows what wolves sound like and what a person trying to sound like an owl, or excuse me, what owls sound like and what a person sounding like an owl sounds like, versus someone who kind of lives in a town.
Yeah, I can see it from that perspective. The only problem I had, and not that she was one of Craster's daughters, Craster's wives. It wasn't like she was in the middle of the wildling army and know their code for communication, and the fact that she absolutely knew in an instant that, oh my God, we're being attacked by wildlings because of what she was hearing. That was the only thing I didn't quite buy.
So I think, first of all, it's a little bit like what I said, is that Craster's Keep was in the middle of the forest. She knows what actual owls sound like. Yeah. Plus, she's the one out of everybody there that actually knows what's going on as far as what the wildlings are up to, knows that there's wildlings around, that there's an ongoing threat, and that there is anything to actually be worried about. And so I think she's the one that is ready for there to be an attack of some kind.
Well, in Castle Black, they say they've been sacking the towns all around. So you would think the people of Molestown would know something's coming if Castle Black knows something's coming.
Okay.
So it doesn't mean that she has to know it's wildlings, but something bad.
Okay, it doesn't bother me as much now that you said that, so that's good. I'm happy that we talked about this. But she does hear the whistles. She tells Mean Lady to shut up, and it's pretty much ignored. And she goes and grabs Baby and hides. As we cut to all of the wildlings and Tormund and Magnarth and everybody coming through and stabbing and being very stabby. And then Mean Ygritte. The comment that was made here was, man, she must really hate that Jon because she's just a woman of vengeance now. A woman scorned because she is all that meanness. Oh, yes, as Sheriff Bullock says in the Q&A, I don't like this Mean Ygritte. I like the saucy Minx hot tub Ygritte. Where does she bring her back? I agree. But
she can't come back.
No.
Jon Snow killed that Ygritte.
Killed that. Yes.
I thought for sure when they you see this big well and you hear everything, I thought someone was gonna pop out of the well for sure, but
That would have been
That
awesome.
was cool. Yeah. Yeah, but they make it into the actual brothel and inn, whatever that is, and kill everybody in there. Ygritte gets puts the mean lady out of her misery, which is was actually fun to see. And then she hears the baby crying and sees Gilly and baby Sam hiding. And you have that moment in time where you're wondering, is she or isn't she? But she puts her finger up to her mouth and says, shush. Mike asks or says in the chat, I felt like I missed something when Ygritte gave Gilly the free pass, unless it was something as simple as not wanting to kill a mother and baby. Seemed a little inconsistent to me. I guess, I didn't have a problem with that as far as, I mean, being a person and being able to kill, everybody, but still having a conscience to the point of killing a mother holding a baby is, a step too far for her.
Yeah,
I think
I can
she
accept
had to
that.
stop and think, and it wasn't easy to kill when she had to think about it. Whereas when it's just an action, it's not hard for her. Yeah, she's passing a woman, she's going to gut her, no big deal. But she had to stop, look, see what she saw, and then she had to think, am I going to kill this mother and child? So I think had Gilly been out in the room, she would have been in more danger. But because Ygritte had to stop and think is really what saved her.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think also, we were just talking about she's all woman of vengeance right now. I think there is so much of her kind of mentally putting Jon's face on every man that she kills in some ways. And so it's not that she would therefore hesitate to kill a woman. I don't think that's the case, but it's more just a matter of this was such a stark contrast that it couldn't probably help but remind her just a little bit of maybe fantasies she might have had about herself and Jon at some point. Like, what if they had been able to stay together and gone off and lived somewhere and had kids or something like she kind of wanted? And so maybe it was just a reminder there. Another thought that occurred to me is just kind of like, oh man, she's all the way over there across all this furniture. I'd have to climb over all that, keep hiding. She'd probably squirm away while I'm doing it. It's just a pain in the ass.
I've got blood falling down the ceiling.
And I'm telling her to be quiet so that nobody will get me in trouble if they find out that I didn't kill her all the way. So
yeah,
clearly not a threat.
Staying there, just I can't be bothered.
Yes, and there was the cool shot as Beefits points out of the blood flowing through the cracks in the in the floorboards in the ceiling, rather.
Super creepy.
Yep. And he also says, "I love Gilly." So, yes.
Who doesn't?
Who doesn't? So we cut from there, where the men at Castle Black, after watching CNN and seeing the the destruction of Molestown, discuss. Again, it's one of those things that we bring that I always have a problem with, but it's like, okay, yeah, time has passed. Somebody wrote in and said, oh my God, they've killed everyone in Molestown, whatever. But with the way the next scene, it's like, how the hell would they know? But obviously time has passed. But Gilly and baby Sam, snuck away or did something they haven't been seen. The first assumption being that they've been killed, and Sam, crying about that. And then they convince him that, she survived all these other things. She could have survived this, which actually I didn't like that scene, that part of the scene, very much at all. I just thought it was, if there had been a question about whether she had survived or not, and they had this discussion, you would think of it in one way. But just knowing that she's survived and then having them just go, woe is me, about,
Yeah, it was a little weird to be in that position where we know she did survive, and then have it be discussed like a question.
Right. If they had ended the scene with before Ygritte puts her finger up to her mouth, just them looking at each other, cut to black, go to there, and then they talk about, oh my God, maybe she didn't survive. Yeah. It would have been much better. But the idea that we knew she had survived, or at least survived that part of it.
That would have been frustrating tension, just leaving that unresolved. But I agree, it would have made that other conversation flow a little better, feel a little bit more worthwhile. I didn't hate it, but you have a point. Yeah. It did feel a little bit awkward.
Yeah. I thought it kind of showed how far they've come. You know, I was completely expecting them to say, would you just shut the fuck up? We got bigger things to worry about. But they were kind, you know.
Yeah.
They've come together. They're really friends.
That's true. That is true. And everybody else was kind, whereas John was just like, he's just thinking about what's coming. He doesn't really make any sort of comments about, Gilly and Baby Sam. He's just thinking about...
John's big picture guy.
Yes, he is. But yes, so after that discussion, they talk further about the threat. Molestown, if they've hit Molestown, the wall must be next. They bring up the 100,000 men again, whereas there's just 105. 102. At the wall after naming the 3 dead men of the Watch. Yeah, the idea that 3 men of the Watch would have been allowed to leave when they're at high alert to get killed in Molestown wasn't quite.
I don't think they were allowed.
Well, I think they made it explicit they weren't supposed to go.
Right.
Which also just raises the question, like you were joking earlier, it's like they saw it on CNN. Like, how did they actually find out? Like, did someone else sneak out when they weren't supposed to? And then it's like, came back, it's like, I have mixed feelings about telling you this because it implicates me, but everyone's dead in Molestown. Yes. I kind of thought that was important, so hopefully you won't punish me because I'm being honest. They could have had a whole scene about that.
Oh. And BFIT says she is a she, not a he. So thanks for that correction. I will not say he anymore.
Good to know, but that's what you get when you only put an initial.
Yes. Yes. So they talk about the 100,000, and then we finally get a good joke from Ed, or one of his comments about if I'm, whoever's the last. Alive, please burn us, because when I'm done with this world, I really don't want to come back.
How much do we all love Dolores Ed?
He's pretty great.
Or Dolores Ed. Is that how you say it? Yeah, Dolores.
Dolores.
Love him.
Yes.
Although I don't think they actually call him that. I think they only ever say Ed in the show.
Yeah.
We know he's Dolores Ed from the book, but...
Yeah.
He's awesome. And this actor is great for him.
Yes, yeah. Everybody. I like everybody. Everybody those actors playing Pip and Gren and Ed. So we cut from there, unless somebody had anything else to talk about with Castle Black. We cut to Marine, where we open with some of the romance in the episode. We got the man jumping into the water, or people jumping in the water, so you're sort of confused as to what's going on at first, and then they show a gray worm popping out from underneath the water, and he sees a naked Missandei. Yes, been waiting for that for a couple seasons. When were they gonna get her naked? HBO, come on! But yes, he was interested, as they point out later. But then they make eye contact. He gets embarrassed and slips under the water.
Mm-hmm. I did want to just observe how, for someone who's claiming to be shy later, the 2 bathing sites seemed pretty close together.
Yeah, and I like the I guess what would you call it, the sort of position of power of her standing up and sort of showing before covering up, so, not being shy.
Yeah.
But,
well, I'm also going to call shenanigans just on the fact that Missandei, handmaiden to the queen in a big city, is washing in a river outside of town with other maids or something? Like, why does she not have her own bathroom?
Mm-hmm.
Answer, she does, and she likes it. Therefore, she has nothing to complain about.
I don't think she was complaining. She
Wow.
just wanted some advice. But I think,
I know,
yes.
I'm teasing, really.
I
I
know,
think it's
I know.
just a show contrivance as well.
Yeah.
And I think that, again, we can call shenanigans, because if you're taking a bath in a river right by all the Unsullied, don't tell me you're not going to see one of them naked
Yeah.
enough to tell what body parts they may or may not have.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know that's why she's taking a bath there. She's like, oh, maybe I'll see a little gray worm, and then
Oh my
Oh,
God.
bada bing! Phrasing. Are we not doing phrasing?
We're bringing it back. But then he looks at her like, I think part of the thing is she just assumed he wouldn't be interested, and the moment she realized, oh my God, he's actually interested, then she's like,
I think she was just confirming. I think she knew when their hands sort of touched during the lesson, but
Yeah.
But
And she didn't completely cover herself. It was more like a nod that this is inappropriate.
Yeah, and I think the distinction is too that a little bit like Daenerys had made this mistake, there was maybe an assumption that even if there's growing affection and respect, she had maybe just thought that, well, they're castrated, therefore there couldn't possibly be any romantic interest, and it was just sort of it's a preconception that has now been proven to not be accurate, which, any, I think, rational thinking person could probably envision that it wouldn't be accurate, but
yeah.
Now that said, it does potentially present some difficulties to any future romantic relationship they might have. Yeah. Not unsurmountable ones necessarily, but
I mean, I think it also points out the idea that just some of the awkwardness of the writing of this episode, which I'll bring up again and again. Like last episode they had whenever it was when they had the the lesson, the language lesson, and Daenerys walks in, and it's obvious that she has this look on her face like, oh, look at you two, what's going on here? Like, you guys look like you're on a little date type look in her eyes, and sort of has a little comment. And then here it's like when Missandei says, oh, I think he's interested, and she's like, like it's the first time it ever crossed her mind that there could be interest between them.
Oh, you mean I shouldn't have been walking around naked in their ranks?
So, yeah.
There is a plot line for Daenerys that they've kind of ignored in the show,
which makes me very sad.
I know, it makes us very sad. But I think that plot point would be very beneficial for Missandei to realize how her and Grey Worm's relationship can work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's even though she's pretty young in the book, there's I guess
she's not young in the show.
No, I know. I'm just saying, even though she is young in the book, wasn't there more of at least an instructional relationship between Dany and her?
Was that with Missandei or?
Well, maybe it wasn't Missandei. Maybe it was other people, but I don't know.
Yeah, in the first season there was.
Yeah, we had
one chick who taught her how to please Drogo.
Doria teaching her her things. So, BFit says, I like the relationship between Grey Worm and Missandei, not in the books, but brilliant in the show.
I agree.
I actually, I was worried about it the first time they had a scene together where it was like, okay, what are they doing? But I did like how what they did and how they did it in this episode. So
I find that I think just in general, I find that I'm watching the show almost more for interest in the scenes that are not in the book or different from in the book. Maybe just a little bit of it just because, stuff that's the same, it's like, well, there's no sense of surprise necessarily there if it's the same as what I expected in the book. But I guess I think a lot of people, when they see an adaptation like this, they can't wait to see visually something that they've experienced already in the books, but I'm finding I enjoy the additions almost more.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Agreed.
So we had the scene which we mentioned earlier with Danny and Miss Andy talking about what happened at the river, and then cut to the throne room, I guess, where Miss Andy is walking around. I don't know, cleaning the stairs. I have no idea what she was doing there. But Grey Worm comes in and apologizes. They have a little exchange in first Valyrian and then changing to the common tongue, where they have a little correction of I to me. But then Grey Worm uses the term precious, which we hear the first mention of Jorah saying, "Oh, Jorah taught me that word." Or the Andal taught me that word, whatever he said.
He said Jorah the Andal.
Yeah, thank you. I was right both ways.
I was wondering what was Jorah's description for precious, and how did that come up?
Well, yeah, you just there's only one thing we can immediately come to mind that Jorah would call precious, right? I don't know that he necessarily said that, but it's certainly what comes to mind.
Yeah.
I sort of took it as actually Grey Worm has been talking to Jorah about I like her, I feel, and maybe he said, well, something you can say is she is precious, or sort of giving him advice on words to use to describe Missandei. But
how do you describe this feeling?
Yeah. But yes, they pretty much the conclusion of that being that they both pretty much say, while he was sorry for staring, they both didn't mind the fact that they were staring at each other. So
it was very sweet, and then all I could think of is, oh fuck, which one's gonna die?
Yeah, that's usually what happens in the next episode, right?
You know what actually came to mind when just in terms of the sort of the end point of their negotiation is the fifth element before Lilu speaks English, and so Bruce Willis kisses her and she slaps him and says something, and he asks the priest, is like, what did she say? She said never without my permission. He's like, oh, okay, yeah, I get it.
Something like that.
I thought it was.
Yeah.
So we come back to Marine later, but let's go over to Moat Cailin, where a bunch of the Bolton men are there with Ramsay and Reek in his Greyjoy breastplate, and Kraken talks about the Kraken. A good line, I think, from the books about Krakens out of water or not being able to, stand up under its own weight type stuff. They, pretty much tells them the plan, or at least most of it being that you're, look like a lord, but keeps belittling him at the same time, saying you're not worth anything, and
you're going to be weak until you're rotting in the ground.
Yeah, exactly. Cuts to him Theon riding on a horse up to the gates. The Ironborn ask him who he is, and then it cuts to inside. He doesn't, say who he is, but they let him in, and then he starts talking to Kenning, and goes from there. What'd you think about this scene, Christiana?
I first want to just say, Alfie Allen, who portrays Theon, I mean, we've admired his performance in the past, although maybe not as much recently, just on the basis that, what he's been going through as a character is sort of less fun. But I think just he conveyed all the shades of what was going on there, which is that he is terrified at the prospect of pretending to be Theon, because it feels like a trap or something, and it's also, there's got to be this element of, maybe buried very deeply, is what if I can't even pretend to be Theon anymore? Like, does that just prove that I'm really only Reek? And yet, I think that's probably very deeply buried, and at the forefront of his mind is, A, if I screw this up, Ramsay will hurt me. But also, B, what if this is a trap that he's only asking me to do this so that he'll have an excuse to hurt me?
Right.
And I think those are probably the forefront of his mind, but there's probably that other layer in beneath. And I think all of that really just comes through because he'll have these space of a few seconds where he looks almost just like Theon used to, but then the instant it's questioned, you see just like, you know, you see like all the strength crumble away behind his eyes, and he starts mumbling to himself. And
yeah, we've talked before about, you know, earning, either actors or characters earning what they're, you know, where they are.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll talk more about, but, you know, Sansa really, I think, earns what happens to her later on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree that Theon Reek has earned what he did in this episode, you know, that it's a culmination of all of that, because we were having, I mean, I had problems some with, you know, the idea of, you know, the torture, whatever, and just the extended pieces of that, but, you know, I think that the end may not completely justify the means of all of the different things that we had to watch last season, but it did, you at least, I think, accept what he's able to do. The idea that, you know, if you're reading a book or reading, you know, and you get to a point and you're like, oh God, you know, you could, the idea that he is, I'm Theon, oh, this Reek thing, you know, whatever, but I'm Theon, but the idea that he has actually gone over so far into that, he, you know, it is believable, like you were saying, and yeah, I think he earned it. Anybody else had any?
No, Milk Galen's a shithole.
Yeah, not one of those great places. You got to use the road to get around it. Not quite as much as the twins, but
I just love the whole bit of, we're not doing this. You talk of honor, cowardice, blah blah blah.
splat.
So you say we'll live? Okay, let's do this. And then of course they actually thought I was going to let them live. Oh, we're not doing that.
What's great too is just how close a parallel that is to when Theon lost at Winterfell before. This whole thing of like, they offer to surrender. It's like, if you don't fight, we'll let you leave and live. And at that point, Theon was the one that said, no, we will fight with honor. We will go down, you know, we will die trying and defending this place in honor. And then someone hits him in the head from behind.
Right.
So he's betrayed. And then Ramsay plays everybody who's thought they were going to get away anyway. And so it's kind of exactly the same thing, except that now he's on the other side. And I don't think that parallel is lost on him either.
Yep.
No,
I do like the idea that he doesn't lie at first. He's like, you know, the Boltons will treat you the same respect they have treated me. You know, and up to that point he's not lying, and then the guy starts questioning. He's like, no, you'll, you know, just give up, surrender, and you'll be able to, you know, you'll be taken to wherever that port is, and you'll be able to go home. And yeah, he, I think that was sort of.
Well, yeah, this idea of like, you fought with honor but lost. Only a whipped dog would say that. And I think the instant he said that, that's when Theon started to lose it altogether. And I think it was only because it was sort of a slow motion meltdown. Was there time enough for the guy's second in command to put an axe in his head before Theon just crumbled entirely?
Totally.
Hey, it was close.
Yeah, I mean, he was mumbling to himself.
Yeah, he was mumbling.
The lip quiver. I'm just like a dagger in the heart. Oh.
B-Fits asks a question. I'm not sure in what context. She asks, especially Chooch, what do you guys think about Theon? Chooch, answer this, please. You mean overall?
Yeah.
Where he is now?
I was hoping that doing the pretend Theon would pull him back. And he's clearly, you know, completely trained, and yeah, I don't know. And notice he's not getting a bath now, and
He's giving
because
it
he's
back.
just Reek. He got a bath when he had to be a lord.
Yep. I mean, I think like a lot of characters, and that we've seen, it's interesting that we've gotten to the point where I definitely rooting for him, at least not to just die, to somehow break out of this. Whereas a couple seasons ago, we hated him. Then they do that with a lot of characters in the books in the show. So I do like him. Don't want him to suffer or die, but we'll see.
Yeah, and like his sister said, my brother is dead. So and I think that brings it pretty much. Yeah, Theon's gone.
And Sheriff Bullock responds to what we said earlier about Mo Kalen looking like a nasty place. He says, "Hey, my father's from Mo Kalen." So father from Mo Kalen and mom from Olestown. That's a good.
That
good
explains
mix
a lot,
there.
actually.
Yeah, it does explain a lot. And Mike McCauley sort of matches what you were saying earlier. There's still that one part of me that hoping Theon would cross back over to the sane side.
Yeah, it's.
And then you hope he wouldn't be a dick anymore.
Well, and it's interesting too, just because I think. I have a theory, and this is, I don't know this for a fact, but I wouldn't be a bit surprised if this was really the last we see of Ramsay and Theon for the season. There's only 2 episodes left, and they've got plenty of other stuff to cover. And this scene in this bit in this episode really felt kind of like a cap to the theme of this season, right? And so I wouldn't be a bit surprised, and to that extent, that also where they're at right now. Again, without getting too spoilery, but we've talked in the past about how all this stuff with Ramsay and Theon as Reek, all the stuff we've seen up to this point was not shown in the book. It's only implied later in, not even in flashback, but just referred to as something that happened previously. But we're kind of about caught up to that. Mm-hmm. And so really, in some ways, the characters are now at where they actually show up again in the books.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So from there we go over to the Eyrie, where I had a little problem with just Peter's sort of, I don't know, just being so subdued and sort of like he had no plan.
Yeah.
That he, obviously one of his goals, whether it might have been pushed ahead of schedule, but obviously one of his goals was to get rid of Lysa, and the idea that there wouldn't be repercussions or questions, and the idea that he's just sitting there having to hope that he's going to be saved, or that Sansa's going to back him up without having, not having talked to her at all. It just sort of came across as not Peter Baelish as a character.
Yeah, I mean, the impression I got was they're trying to imply that he just sort of thought that he would be more successful at just talking his way out of it, and he was finding that they were even less receptive than he expected. But I agree that just it seems... But at the same time, it's also... I think what it maybe does is, we had some theories, when we talked about what happened last time about this idea, did he stage this kiss in such a way that he expected to be seen, and in order to sort of provoke this confrontation? I suspect that this is kind of more indication that that was maybe not the case, and it was really sort of it was an uncharacteristically impulsive decision for him to actually push her that way, and that although he had maybe had long-term plans of getting rid of her, he accelerated it because of how crazy she was being.
Yeah, I sort of take it to the extent of, I think it was a little bit of lazy writing, that it was, we wanted to give Sansa her moment of her culmination of, showing that she's learned that she can play the game, that she can lie, all of those things. And in order to do that, we had to put Peter in a corner and put him in danger to have her be able to do this. And so, the idea that Peter Baelish would, find himself in this situation doesn't quite play into how his character has shown to be resourceful and whatever from the beginning of the show.
Yeah, with all of his long-term planning, there's no way he planned on getting there, marrying her, and killing her within a few days, because it's too obvious.
And it's not like that Royce and these three family, that they were in the castle when this happened. It had to be weeks before, or however long it would be, for them to travel there and start questioning him. The idea that they haven't gotten a story together before this time, that she's...
They said it was 3 days.
Okay, so 3 days. Even 3 days, that they wouldn't, come up with a plan to,
Well, I think the plan was he was just going to talk his way out of it, and he was just finding that they weren't willing to listen to him.
Right.
Yeah, he looked cool as a cucumber to me. He's just, he's got an answer for everything. And then when they said, about the cousin or niece or whatever, and we get her. Yeah. We don't want it, adulterated or whatever. And my thought was immediately, oh well, we've already talked, because how could they not have?
The whole timing on this whole storyline is just bonkers, because if you think about the fact that so Sansa left King's Landing, she traveled up to the air with the Arya, however you say it, I'm horrible with pronunciation, with Peter, went through the whole thing, Peter got married, Peter kissed her, lights out the moon door, all of this happening, and Tyrion's still sitting in jail, and the whole thing hasn't, his trial by combat hasn't even happened. So everything with timing here is just crazy bananas.
Well, not necessarily, because they had to recall the mountain to King's Landing for him to be that champion. Because I definitely get the impression that Tyrion has been in jail. It's not just been a couple of days.
Yeah.
I agree. They're fuzzing, but I feel like there's in-universe explanations that you can give. I think what's more than that, I'm less bothered by that than just the fact that the actual amount of time it takes to travel anywhere is plot variable.
Yes.
Oh yeah. So we have the discussion with Littlefinger before they bring in Elaine, and then she starts telling her side of the story, and then
don't gloss over the fact that she tells them who she is.
Yes, no, I was going to say she sort of goes along with the story for a minute about being Elaine, but then stops, says I have to tell the truth here. And says I'm Sansa Stark, eldest daughter of Lord Eddard Stark, and then talks to Lord Royce and says, notes that they met at Winterfell when he was escorting his son Sir Waymar to the Wall. Chooch, do you remember who Sir Waymar was?
Nope.
Sir Waymar is the first person that dies, or just maybe the second person that dies in the show. He was the one that was ranging outside of the wall and was killed by the first other that we see. So yeah, that was a good callback.
That's a good catch. I hadn't even grasped that, but she didn't tell them who she was in the books. That's different. But what's funny too is that using the detail that she had met that one guy, that's actually from the books. But in the book, what it was is her telling Baelish that's like, I'm worried he's going to recognize me because I met him once, and he's basically just saying, don't worry, your hair is different color because we colored it and you're older. He won't remember. So it's an interesting detail that they took that detail from the books, but used it in a completely different way by having her actually explain who she was at this point, which had not happened in the books, and yet I thought that it worked pretty effectively, because what it allowed her to do is they all knew Peter was lying about some stuff, and it was where they were at was like, we know he's lying about some things, so maybe he's lying about everything, because we have no idea why he's lying or what his motivations are. It's all very suspicious. But then when she gives an explanation to say, he's lied a bunch, but it was to protect me. And so all of a sudden that gives this alternate way of looking at everything that he's done up to this point that makes it seem noble and not shady.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Which I thought was very necessary, because if she was really his niece, why would they believe what she says?
Yeah.
You know, she's a completely uncredible witness. But if she's Sansa Stark, you know, she's a credible witness.
One other thing we should probably note in terms of a difference from the book is it's a little extra complicated for Peter here, because in the book there was another guy in the room when all this happened. It was this this traveling singer that had weaseled his way into the court, and he was kind of a sleazeball in general, but basically he became the scapegoat. Even though he was really just standing there not doing anything, basically what happens is Peter shoves Lysa and then calls the guards and says, "Hey guards, this guy just killed Lysa."
Yeah.
Yes.
It was really great. The other thing is, bringing up that she's Sansa Stark, is it brings back something that we often forget, especially in the series, is that is where Ned grew up. So
Yeah.
she has very good reason to trust and to get the people, the lords of the Vale, on her side, because they all remember Ned. And we remember the North's loyalty to Ned. He was a strong and honorable person, so his personality carried a lot of weight. Well, the same is said for what happens in the Vale. I mean, heck, the two boys that grew up in the Vale started a rebellion and took over the kingdom, and the Vale supported them. You know, and half the kingdom supported them. So Ned's personality and his name still carries weight. Even though the Lannisters labeled him a traitor, there's still so many people in the realm that trust him and trust that name.
Well, and as they said, you know, like when Peter, he skillfully implies that maybe they're on the side of the Lannisters, specifically so that the reaction will be, no, we're not with the Lannisters, implication, we're actually with you because you're also not with the Lannisters. So
the enemy of my enemy.
He tricks them into essentially saying they're on his side, just because he characterizes the Lannisters as the only other side anyone can be on.
And the other thing that to note about this scene and the whole thing about, don't you remember you met me when you brought your son north, is how the lords don't pay attention to kids, and how it will, identifying the Stark children is going to be very tricky in this world. You know, I mean, nobody knows what Arya Stark looks like. Nobody knows what Sansa Stark looks like. Nobody's been paying attention. So who are you going to get to say that these people are who they say they are? There are no birth certificates. Their maester and their septa have been killed. There's no one that can say, oh yeah, this is exactly those people. It's all hearsay now. So
Right.
that
Well,
would be true about, you know, Bran, Rickon, Arya, and Sansa.
So we have you know, her telling her side of the story. She says who she is, and then does what she does well, which is tell the truth for most of the story. And you know, some of the things are damning to Peter, as sorry, I'm trying to find the funny line. Yes, the Mike McCauley says in the Q&A that the look on Peter's face was epic when Sansa revealed who she really was. Drawer changing time, underwear changing time. I'll just change that because that's not a fun word to say. But yes, you know, and then she gets to the point where she says yes, and Peter kissed me. But then all of a sudden, boom, she finally shows she can play the game just like everybody else, and you know, says, oh, it was just a peck on the cheek. You know, that when they were arguing in front of the moon door, that Peter was trying to talk her down and calm her down, and then you know, that she threw herself off. And then you have the hug with Lady what's her name? Anya.
Lady doesn't matter.
Lady doesn't matter.
Do you know who played her? The actress seemed really familiar.
I don't know. But she, hugging her and then turns in such a way that she's able to look at Peter and give him the eyes to say, "Ha!" But,
Nailed it.
Yeah. Mike McCauley's...
Welcome.
Yes, and then Mike McCauley says, Sansa's testimony and look at Littlefinger during the hug was a nice display of a power shift. Yes, I thought that was as well earned as any character growth in the show as far as getting to that point. And we'll get to it later, one thing I didn't like as far as character growth is the outrageous outfit she wore later.
Oh, come on, that was the best part.
Yeah.
She went full-on supervillain.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
She's in mourning.
She was over the top. Come on.
No, she basically is literally halfway between her mother Catelyn and Maleficent.
Yeah,
I know.
And not only that, but did you notice the shoulder stuff was like all feathers?
Ravens,
so it's like in honor of
feathers.
honor of Baelish, who's like his mockingbird, bird motif, and the Arya and so all that, and
the dark hair. And
I thought that was great because I think when he has the follow-up conversation with her, that was so the lie was one thing.
Yes.
But her handling of him.
Yes. Yeah, we skipped that.
Was so skillfully handled on her part that I felt that earned the dress, which I loved. So just first of all, this whole thing of like she doesn't even make eye contact, she doesn't look up from her needlepoint or whatever the hell she's doing, and he's like, so why did you help me? It's like, well, if they threw you out the moon door, what would they do with me? I'm not sure. Neither was I. And she's just like not even looking at him. And then that whole bit of, it's like, why would you trust me? Is like, well, because I know what you want. And he's like, do you? And then they just have this great stare down. And then it's like, oh, okay, good, we're partners now, awesome.
Yeah, which was better because I thought she was going to say everything because that's what he said, but that was even better, just that start. But back before that, when he's like exonerated and now he's talking to the Lords of the Vale, I'm like, oh yeah, and I think Robin really needs to spread his wings and get out there, and I'm like, fuck, he's going balls deep. I mean, he was found guilty of killing somebody.
Let's send the frail little boy who has never left the castle out where all the dangerous hill people are. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. And then when Sansa walks down in that outfit, I'm like, fuck, she's going balls deep too.
I was so happy when I saw that. I was just like, oh, that's so great.
I will let you enjoy that. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, good, because you couldn't stop me even.
Yeah, I couldn't stop you. Yeah, but I was just like, oh God, how over the top is that? That's all.
So, B Fitz had a really cool comment in the Q&A there, by the way, which I just think has to be mentioned. It's during the whole scene with Peter, not really on trial, but the questioning, and it's Peter's like, holy shit, this isn't what happened in the books. What do I do now?
Yes. Very good.
Maybe that's why Peter's always a step ahead of everybody. He got to read the books.
Yeah,
that explains everything.
Yes, we had B-Fit saying Sansa the evil queen.
Mm-hmm.
We had the black dress screams, I am now officially badass, Mike McCauley said.
She could have sang Let It Go. Talking about like, all my family's dead, but
my daughter has sang that 20 times over the weekend. I still haven't seen the daggone movie, and she's singing that in May.
Oh well, you should see it because it's awesome.
I bought it for. We went on a 6-hour drive to my dad's this weekend, and they watched it. I mean, they've seen it probably 10 other times, but they watched it like 3 times. So I've heard the entire movie from the front seat. But yeah. And Sheriff Bullock says Sansa has entered her goth phase, and I love it.
I totally want to cosplay that.
I am the only one that, thought that was a little over the top. Yes, and BFIT says Peter's line, which I thought was very funny. The "Let's throw Robin from the nest." Just the way he sort of paused before he said it, like, "Hey, I'm making a joke," and it's true too. Mike McCauley said earlier, Sansa also seems to be displaying her thirst for power again. First with Joffrey, but that was more, "I want to be his princess and have his babies."
Yeah.
Now with Peter, I'm starting to really enjoy her character development this season.
Thirst for survival, but yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Sansa in the show is becoming what Cersei was afraid Sansa would be,
Hmm.
which is awesome.
That's interesting. I hadn't ever thought of it like that, but you might be right. See, I had always kind of thought of it like Cersei was too narcissistic to ever see anybody as able to do anything other than bat their eyelashes and use sex appeal, because that's all she's able to do. Or, it's not really, but I think that's kind of how she projects that. Mm-hmm. And so that's how I had always taken it. But you think she actually saw that manipulative type of potential in Sansa?
Well, I don't want to get into spoilers or anything, but when we get Cersei chapters, we get inside her head and we realize why she hates Sansa, why she hates Marjorie, and her very real fears because of this thing that happened when she was a kid. Mm. Yeah, so all of that.
I wonder if will they even do that though in the show?
I don't know. It doesn't seem like they will.
They don't do flashbacks. So yeah. I mean, she could tell the story, I suppose, but who would she tell the story to?
I don't know. She doesn't trust anyone.
Yeah.
Unless that Dornish woman does come into the show eventually.
Well, what they actually could do is they could have Valeria Sand stick around. I mean, just because they've got an actress. I mean, it would be a little hard to justify why she's okay with hanging out with Cersei after all this. But
I don't know why Cersei would hang out with her.
She's going to be
one night.
Nah, she's going to be screaming for the next 3 years, I think.
Oh my God! Never. She'll wake up screaming. Decades from now.
So let's jump over to Marine. We have.
Marine.
Yes, back to Marine. Sorry.
Just to be a little bit pedantic, I know you wouldn't want.
You love correcting me. You love correcting me, which is fun. We have Barristan looking on as they're taking down the bodies of the crucified masters. Starts to go back up to wherever he's going, and the Amirani's boy or some boy, maybe the same boy that was handing out pardons in season 2. Or season 1, he gives Barristan a scroll with the hand of the king, and Mormont asks what it is, and kid runs away. He looks at it, has a look on his face, and then goes to talk to Jorah, gives him the scroll, and says, or they both read it, and or Mormont asks what it is. He says it's a royal pardon, and then he asks him, straight out, were you spying on Daenerys? And then, basically said that, he wanted to give it to him first, not go behind his back, because they're knights and they are honorable.
I want to just briefly call another minor plot shenanigan nitpick sort of thing. How in the world did they send a new copy of the pardon from years ago that was signed by Robert Baratheon?
It was a fax.
Oh, okay. It was still in the memory.
Yeah.
No, maybe it was the same kid, and he was still just carrying it around from when Jorah didn't take it years ago.
They issue pardons in triplicate, right? So, there was an extra one.
Yeah, the fact that it was signed by Robert Baratheon and they made that point was a little much.
The implication when we last saw them talk about it with Tywin was that Tywin was going to write some sort of a letter. And it would be one thing for Tywin to write a letter to say, we know that Jorah did this. But obviously, the actual pardon signed by Robert Baratheon carries a lot more weight. But again, like, how would they actually have that still that they could send? That I was a little dubious about. I don't care a lot, but I did wonder. I did think it's like, that's a little. The only explanation is it's the same kid. You know, when Jorah didn't take it the last time, the same kid just had it in his pocket since then.
Yeah.
It was a little confusing because it seemed like it was implied like Jorah had never seen it, or like finally a pardon, or I don't know. It clouded the actor's emotions to me. But as you say, it's a minor thing.
Yeah. And I think it also bothered me a little, and I don't know if they truly established, but Barristan already knew that there was something. Am I wrong about this? Was it established that Barristan knew that there was something with Jorah, or did he just not trust him?
In the show, they made it very clear that he wasn't in those council meetings.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in the books, he did know.
But couldn't say because he was still in secret.
That's I'm just confusing it with books. So yeah. You're right. Okay, so that didn't bother me, but yeah, the what Christiana said about the idea that a pardon with Robert's signature would be floating around that they could get there was a little much, but
he can do whatever.
Yeah, Varys made copies. He had him sign 3 of them, triplicate, like you said. So, but the one line there saying, or Jorah says, "Can I speak to Daenerys privately?" And Barristan said, "You will never be alone with Daenerys again." Mm-hmm. Later, they are in the throne room. He walks up, puts his hands behind his back, and asks to speak alone. She refuses. They go through their story. You're sort of wondering, okay, is he going to lie? And he tells the truth, and you're sort of like, well, maybe there'll be some forgiveness here. He did all this stuff, but then once they got to, did you tell them that I was carrying Drogo's unborn child? That was it. So yeah. I thought they played that well as far as her. It's like, oh, he's been supporting her for so long, but the idea that maybe she could have forgiven him for some things, but putting the baby in danger and then catching the poisoned wine.
Well, the other thing too, I think, was just that was like, even on top of just the element of like, that was the detail that prompted Robert to send the assassin, right? I mean, that was the thing that was the last straw that he couldn't deal with anymore, and now she's going to have a baby? But the other aspect of it was, too, like, that was after the two of them had this friendship growing. You know what I mean? It's like they had been, traveling together with Drogo. He had been offering her advice and looking after her, and even then he was still reporting, especially this detail that he knew would be such a big deal.
Yeah, everything was based on a lie. Built on a lie.
Reporting stopped, before they had gotten to that point. I think she could have forgiven him and said, well, we built a friendship, so he stopped and he made the choice. But I agree. He had already been her friend. He had been through so much with her. How could he still be reporting on that? And then when he found out she was pregnant and he reported that, it's just, when you're reporting that, you would know that is a death sentence. So she just can't.
Mm-hmm. BFit's having a little trouble in the Q&A. First she said, poor Jorah, and then was trying to tell me something, and then said, oh, fuck, never mind. So, if you want to retype your statement or question, maybe it was just poor Jorah. I don't know.
Tywin forged it.
And then she said Tywin forged it, which is possible that was it. So
that is one of the other things, we sometimes talk about the Ravens being, Westeros Twitter or whatever, but that's the other thing that I've always found a little bit mysterious about, the idea that, oh yeah, it's signed and there's a seal, because nobody could ever possibly create a phony seal.
Well, and he died, right? So where did that ring go? I mean, it's not like they smelted it. They probably
Well, it was a
do
ring of
anything else.
the seal was the hand anyway. It wasn't the stag.
Oh,
It was
on the outside, but we didn't see what was on the inside. Like we saw when Robert did that decree with Ned, he used his ring to sign as himself, like the royal signet ring, the royal seal.
Yeah.
but
Presumably, you'd be buried with that.
yeah, but if I wanted to make sure that things went the way I wanted them to go, I would definitely be stealing that and saying, yeah, if I need a document.
It's not like nobody has the ability to cast another ring.
Yeah, they don't have CSI. They don't know how old a parchment is.
Yeah, and the idea that if it was ravens carrying little messages, that's much different than a scroll. How that got over there,
Backpacks.
maybe enough time had passed that a ship could have gotten there, what have you. So,
well, that's the other thing is that we really, other than just we're seeing it in the same episodes, for example, we don't really have direct confirmation that these are happening contemporaneously. You know what I mean?
Yes.
We only get sporadic details where in Westeros they talk about, oh yeah, she's taken Marine, or in Marine we hear, oh yeah, Joffrey's dead. Those are really the only clues we have at their respective timelines.
Right.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I have a new, completely uneducated guess that this isn't the last we'll see of Jorah. I think he'll pop up somewhere. Like they'll get reports that he's rabble rousing and still working for Dany and bringing people over to her cause.
Ooh.
That's my prediction.
I like that. But he had such a good send off on his horse with the city behind him. I thought that was nice.
Yeah. Well, the thing
goodbye.
You have to remember, as far as character pairings go, this is the oldest one. This is like the only one where like those two characters met in episode 1, and they've really been traveling together ever since then. I don't think we have a single other character pairing where the characters have stayed together that long.
Did John and Sam meet in episode 1, or was that episode 2?
I don't think it was episode 1, and then they also spent a substantial period apart through season 2, and almost all of season 2 and into season 3.
Yep.
Let's see. We go back to the north, and we have the scene between. Don't think we need to spend too much time on this, but the between Roose and Ramsay. The idea that the north is hundreds of miles in all direction, and I run it all. Roose says, and then he gets what other bastards always hope for, I'm sure, which is the decree saying that you are no longer a bastard, you are my true-born son.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, I like to say that he will uphold the name and the tradition. We know he likes to uphold the traditions, that's for sure. I'll
Traditions are his favorite part.
Yes, cool. Play as many
important.
you need me to. So,
there have been plenty of jokes on the internet that I think are entirely appropriate about everything the light touches, just like in Lion King, where Mufasa is telling Simba, it's like everywhere the light touches. That's
yeah, that is good. I like that.
Mm-hmm. I tell you, I didn't get this until the very end of the scene when it was formally revealed, but just this idea that, oh, we've just had these two characters have this whole momentous conversation, and now where are they going?
What's in the distance?
Winterfell.
Did you see it?
Oh.
Yep. So we got our new, because Ramsay says at the end of the earlier scene that they'll be going to a new place, or doesn't really say what it is. He's just like, we're going to a new home or what have you, and then seeing the husk of Winterfell in the distance was pretty awesome.
Occupied by these guys. Blech.
These guys.
These guys. I hate these guys.
Yes. And you can't even get across how equally weird and that Roose is in the books. They haven't quite gotten all of that
Yeah.
into his character in the show. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, Ramsey did definitely not fall far from the tree.
Yeah,
regard.
in the show, he's just much more of like he really doesn't kind of care about anybody. He's willing, he's certainly willing to resort to whatever tactics he thinks will be effective, and he's kind of just cold. In the books, though, he's really strange in other ways. Like he's obsessed with leeches. He has leeches drawing blood from him all the time, and he speaks in this really weird, whispery voice that everyone's like creeps
Yeah.
everybody out whenever he talks.
Because everybody's loud and he'll just speak very quietly.
Yep.
Doesn't he also have a scent about him?
Yeah, he
You
smells
might be
a
right.
certain way. He's
I
always like
didn't remember
bathing
that.
in something or rubbing himself with oils or something that smells funny. I can't remember.
Mhm.
From here we went back to the Eyrie for the sewing scene, so we don't need to rehash that. Although, again, the idea that he asked her, well, I like the
That is
idea.
bouncing.
Yeah, that is bouncing.
I do that. My chair's a ball.
Oh, she uses one of those balls for that.
Mhm.
Okay, I got to take the camera off you. I can't look at my notes with Nutty bouncing up and down.
That was my secret plan, to call attention to it, to distract you.
Yeah. I did like the line where Baelish says, "Better to gamble on the man you know rather than the strangers you don't." Yeah, it was like more like the devil you know type line. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea that she doesn't answer his question about what she wants.
Well, I still really just liked this aspect of really almost. I feel like it's the first time that he respects her. As it's one thing for him to have like affection for her, or even skeezy lust for her, or thinking that she is a very valuable asset in his plans. But after this conversation, and not even just the lie, but also her explanation to him about it, is the first time that he's kind of realizing, oh, maybe you will be more useful to me than just a pawn that I do whatever I want with. Maybe I can actually trust you, to do things on your own too. And but at the same time, this whole poker face contest about I know what you want, do you? And then neither of them answer.
Yep.
I thought that was great.
Yep. So we have the next scene being outside the Eyrie, in the Vale with Sandor and Arya. Great end of the scene. I mean, good scene overall, but the idea that asking her what makes her happy, and she said, well, killing Polliver and Rorge made me happy. And he's like, so you're upset that you didn't get to kill Joffrey yourself. And then I thought this was the great line, talking about the idea that wish she had been there to watch it, to look in his eyes when he knew it was over. And then Sandor says, yeah, you can't beat that look. It's just great.
It was definitely that point. It's like, well, I want to argue, but
yeah, I want to make fun of you, but yeah, you're right. But yeah, they keep going.
Creepy bonding.
Creepy bonding. The idea that poison is a woman's weapon. And I love the idea when she says that you'll never be a great killer, to him. He said she could use a chicken bone to kill Joffrey.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, this idea that she basically just calls him on the idea that it's like you're killing people for your ego rather than because you think they need to be dead. And so that's the only reason that you would be disdainful of the means that someone else uses to kill someone that you agree should be dead. And so just this whole but at the same time, Arya is just continuing this. One write-up I saw called it a pitch drop descent into chaos, referring to that experiment about how pitch is technically a liquid even though it moves extremely slowly, so you can just have it where it's like it's dripping, but it takes like literally like years to actually make a whole drip that falls. And so just this inevitable but slow moving still descent like into just total, I don't know if you want to call it nihilism necessarily, but just this she has like this laugh is such an indication. Well, first of all, I'm sure it's just this tremendous release that she's laughing as much at ha ha Soundor, now you don't even get anything as she is anything else, because I think she is actually legitimately kind of stopped actually hoping for some good thing to happen to her, and she's more laughing at just the absurdity of like, we just came all this way and it happened again.
Lady Aaron died
Really,
3 days ago.
Yeah.
really needs to stop trying to see relatives because she's just killing them all. I also like how when Arya, her whole argument against the poison is a woman's weapon, she just points out the misogyny in that statement and in Sanders. She's like, you don't care. You're not a good killer. Like, who cares how it's done? And women will kill using anything. I am a woman. I will use a chicken bone. And I think that Arya really believes that there are other women like her out there. And she really doesn't, like, Sandor still has this block of women don't do these things, even though he keeps getting presented with women that do. And
Right.
Arya can just sit there going, yeah, your outlook is messed up, and so is the entire world. And I the whole scene is just perfect. And then the giggle, of course.
Yeah, that was incredible. We also.
I'm really
I was
curious.
I was just gonna say the other thing that came out in this conversation was the wound on his neck, shoulder is not better.
He's
She
walking
says that
slow.
He's walking. You're walking a lot slower than you have been, and that sort of thing. You were saying something, Christiana?
Well, I think actually I might have been about to say what Chooch was going to say, which is probably, let's see if I'm right, wondering why we actually didn't get any follow-up to that scene to say, well, even if Lady Aaron is dead, it's not an obvious reason to believe, oh yeah, so we're going to turn Arya Stark away at the door. So
Right.
the fact that they get all the way to the Eyrie at this point, they're doing something with that. At the same time, just like why it's one thing if they establish like we don't believe you, but they didn't really do that. They kind of left it unresolved in that scene, and so what's the payoff to that? I don't know. I was surprised they didn't give us more closure on that.
Yeah, although the hysterical laughter may have made them think, well, maybe she's not Arya Stark. But yeah, the idea is, if nothing else, maybe they were able to just turn around and walk away or whatever. But the idea that somebody at least has heard that she is alive, and if if it is really her, so at least somebody should be notified. Maybe we'll get those two Stark kids together at some point.
It seems
Half a mile away.
she's, as a Stark child, she's too important to just let them walk away. Even if they were lying, you have to, they have to follow that up. How could you not?
Yep, we'll have to see where that goes. Oh, Mike McCauley says, my grandmother was born in Winterfell. So, all sorts of family born in different.
Old man.
And then Sheriff Bullock says, stop stealing my jokes, Michael. Yes, and Arya has gone so dark, Beefhead says, everyone went dark in this episode. End of part 1 of A Song of Ice and Fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yes, that
Although part 1, see, that calling that end of part 1 that's like the standard structure where I don't know that I mean, everyone likes to quote Tyrion's line now, or no, I guess this was Ramsay's line, which is, if you think this story has a happy ending, you haven't been paying attention.
Yeah. Yes.
I love her giggle. When she started laughing, I started clapping. And Maisie just, oh man, it looked so sincere.
Just the juxtaposition of his face and her laughing is priceless.
Yep. Yeah, it was definitely the highlight of the show.
So when are we going to have the all Arya and Sandor show? I mean, really.
Oh, we've been asking for it.
I would watch that like crazy.
After that is the discussion about, or with Robin, which we already talked about. You know, him convincing him, hey, you're going to be, you're going to be leaving and traveling, and he's scared, and he says that Mom's always said that it's only safe at the Eyrie, and Littlefinger points out it wasn't safe for her inside the Eyrie, and then he's, being his happy self with the kid, which is just creepy when he's acting happy and helpful. But he notes that people die at their dinner tables, in their beds, even squatting over chamber pots. He looks increasingly frightened. But he puts his hands on his shoulders and, that don't worry about death, worry about life and live your life to the fullest. That's what it means to be Lord of the Vale, yada, yada, yada. Then we get, black raven feathered dress and dark hair and, Maleficent.
And the way she's silhouetted at the top of the stairs like that's just classic supervillain entrance. Oh my God, I loved it so much. I'm sorry that you're not able to. I hope that at
grumpy.
least you're.
I can say I'm grumpy.
You're getting some pleasure from my pleasure in it.
Definitely. I am very happy that you were that happy about that dress because.
Well, I feel like I don't often enough point out how great the costumes are in this show, and this one just made me so happy.
I won't go into it. I'll just say she had such a wonderful character moment in the room, with the look at him, and then like the over the top moment was just like, I wish they hadn't done it, but that's just me. So let's go over to King's Landing.
All they should have had in addition is at the end of that scene in her bedroom, Peter just has her stand up and he goes, "It's time," and then we have to have the gearing up where she puts it on and we see her, the montage tying her hair back, the necklace, shoulder pads,
Maybe
like Batman.
A cool little thing on the DVD or something that would be awesome.
There we go. So let's cut over to King's Landing for the last 10 minutes of the show, or however long it was, 12 minutes. We've got Tyrion in the cell with his brother. They're talking about the trial by combat and how how funny it is or absurd it is that the gods are judging guilt and innocent by having two men hack at one another. Tells you something about the gods. Then he starts asking about Oberyn, Red Viper of Dorne. You don't get a name like that unless you're deadly, right?
He's certainly confident.
Yeah. Tyrion sort of goes from being hopeful to sort of like being sure that Oberyn's going to die, and that means he's going to die. The overconfidence. Then they start talking about. I thought it was talking about the different types of killing: matricide, patricide, filicide, fratricide, suicide. Killing your nephew is nepoticide, and then he's like, "There's no kind of killing that doesn't have its own word." And then he's like, "The killing of cousins," which of course Jaime did.
He knows that one
to escape. He's like, "Yeah, when you kill your cousin."
Good one, Jaime.
I like that. But then they have the story about Orson,
Mm-hmm.
cousin Orson, and the killing of beetles.
Are you going to be grumpy about Coon Coon Coon?
Nope.
No? Okay, good then.
I will tell you. I will tell you a complaint in a while, but they go over the story and the idea, that Orson killed these beetles, and Tyrion became obsessed with trying to determine or figure out why Orson was killing these beetles, and he just went through the whole story of that. And then the funny ending of the story, until he was kicked in the chest by a donkey or whatever it was, which was funny. And then, the idea of that conversation, whether it's sort of the idea of we're in this situation, we've got to talk about anything else except the elephant in the room of, this trial by combat coming up, or I guess the idea can be that the story of Orson is about the idea that Orson, the one thing Orson could control in his life was the killing of these beetles, and now Tyrion has no control over anything in his life, whatever the
But he lets
lines you want to
roly-poly
draw.
live.
Yes, he does. He lets the roly-poly live. So we should let Tyrion live, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I loved the scene despite it not. I mean, it's a little bit like what I was saying earlier in terms of these additions as opposed to just the plot scenes, because I feel like it adds so much stuff that could easily be lost when you adapt to TV, because the tendency in a lot of TV or movie adaptations is just to show the plot, and you lose all of the little nuanced character stuff. But what I thought was great about this whole speech is there's the element, like you said, this idea that maybe Orson's reason was just that was the only thing he could control. But I thought that there was just that additional layer, too, of Tyrion has always been the sort of person that wants to understand why something happens. Why did someone do that? Why did this thing happen? Why did that strategy work? He wants to understand these things. That's always been his strong suit, is knowing things and thinking about things. But if he can't even figure out why a moron likes to smash beetles, then what hope is there to ever be able to figure out anything ever? And I think he is really on the cusp of total despair here, of just feeling like it's not even about like I'm scared to die right now. It's more just like the world is just this like inscrutable, malevolent place that bad things keep happening for no reason, and there's just no way to ever figure any of it out. And that just seems to be the headspace he's in. And so he's just recollecting this idea that this simple cousin they have who only likes to crush beetles, it seems like that should be something like, if you want to learn how to understand people, that would be like entry level. But even that, just he spent so much time and he couldn't just he got nowhere with it. And just that idea of like wanting to understand, why does Cersei hate him so much? Why does Tywin hate him so much? Why do people act the way they do? He's feeling like he wants to throw up his hands and say like it's unknowable, and yet his whole life has been about trying to know things.
Right.
Yeah.
I had no problem with the scene itself. I mean, I like the story. I like what was going on. One of the problems I had with the show is, end of the last episode was the reveal, I will be your champion. Then nothing until this scene, and then the combat. And one of the first questions that comes to mind when he announces that, I would think, would be, oh my God, Oberyn, a Prince of Dorne, is going to fight as Tyrion's champion. He could die, and there's no discussion between Tywin and him, or Cersei saying, okay, if the Mountain kills this guy, my daughter is with his family. I would think that there would be some politics. There would be more lead up to the actual trial by combat rather than having an episode and then the last 10 minutes getting to that. having it occur.
So let's envision delaying this fight.
I don't mean delaying the
another
fight.
episode.
No, I don't mean delaying the fight, but taking 6 minutes for that scene in that cell.
I feel like all that happens off camera, and who cares? I wanted to know where Tyrion's mind is at.
And I don't disagree with that. I just think that some of the time of that scene could have been served and still had the power of the scene. Because I think also that scene, even though he's always a great actor, I did not get the power of most of the scenes that he is in through that scene. And then probably most of that is just the idea that he was so despairing that there's no, that it comes across differently. But I just, the whole buildup of this season was this battle as far as, for this episode. And I just thought that it was, 48 minutes of other things, and then boom, battle over. And it was just, just thought that there was more that could have been done.
I kind of wanted to have some Oberyn Tyrion time. There's a very specific scene that was hoping would be in there, but wasn't. I'm not so sure that the fallout was really what we needed to see. But I definitely think, like, going from I will be your champion to fight, I can see how you might want something more in there, and I would have loved to have more Oberyn Tyrion conversation.
Yeah, for me, I think that they're saving the fallout, because as a viewer and not reading the books or anything, I just rolled through that. Okay, I'm going to be the champion. Yeah, let's get it on. Right, so it's keeping kind of that momentum. And then it didn't occur to me what the implications were until the last scene. And then I sat back and I was sitting there going, holy fuck, and then saying, like, well, what happens now? What does that mean? And so maybe they were just leaving all that to the viewers.
Yeah, I don't want to tell you guys your opinions are wrong, but I don't share them. I feel like I feel like ending the episode exactly where they did is exactly the right place to end it.
I agree on that.
And then I think the stuff that, what do we actually gain from having a scene where, say, Tywin and Cersei and Oberyn talk about the political implications of whatever decision they're making, given that we know the only conclusion they're going to come to is what happens?
Yeah.
Like, there's no advancement that can be gained from that, other than just, hey, everybody, there are implications. Now, I'm sure they could have made the scene good. I just didn't feel any lack of that. Personally.
Yeah, I don't mean necessarily that it had to be about the political ramifications of him being the champion, but just the idea that we have all of these pieces and people that are involved and that have been built up for the entire season. These relationships, he's on this. Oberyn's on the council, and he's doing this. And just the entire episode, and I don't mean specifically complaining about that scene, which came across that way, but just the idea that for the 48 minutes, there's nothing about what's going on in King's Landing and the impending battle or trial by combat, and then we get to it, and it's over.
Well, but I feel like anything that's following those characters at all that does not get us to the fight is going to make people impatient. And so if you're going to have any of that, I feel like I want insight into where Tyrion is at going into that fight. That's what I want to know most. The rest of that stuff, I feel like I don't know that we gain anything from learning it before the fight.
Okay.
That's my take.
No problem there with that. Once again, Mike McCauley from earlier, just getting these out of the way. Once again, Stark siblings don't reconnect after being so close. I wonder if the Donkey Kick, Mike McCauley says, I wonder if the Donkey Kick actually killed Orson. The irony of a senseless bug killer being randomly taken out by an ass-kicking. Sheriff Bullock says, I don't think the Tyrion scene advanced anything. We know why his family hates him. He killed his mother. I would have preferred more Oberyn, always more Oberyn.
I didn't say it advanced anything. I'm just saying that the other scenes wouldn't advance anything either. And what I want to know about is where Tyrion's mind is at. Not let's have discussions that are not going to have any weight until we know the outcome of the fight anyway.
Yeah. Sheriff Bullock also says he's in agreement with me. I think we could have guessed where Tyrion Mines was. It was an okay scene, but too long. Would have rather the screen time been spent elsewhere. At least we got some good Tyrion Jaime. Duh, crush Beatles. Don't. Have you?
Yes.
Go. Yes. So there we go. So we get to the trial by combat. By the way, did you see the thing with you put it on, Christiana, on your Google Plus? Peter Dinklage wearing the stay calm and keep calm and demand trial by combat, which is a shirt I wore at Balticon, so that was cool.
Although the comment that I put along with it was, well, it seems like a good idea.
Yeah.
That picture is in.
But, his ratio is 50-50 at this point. It worked once, and it has not worked a second time, so...
I'm just very happy. I'm just very happy that Peter Dinklage was wearing a shirt that I was wearing.
No, it was very cool.
A shirt that I was wearing
absolutely.
a week ago.
Yeah.
So.
I don't mean to diminish the coolness of that. It was definitely cool.
Yes. So the bells ring, and Tyrion is led out to the yard. There's a tent there with Oberyn and Alaria Sand. He's lightly armored, which Tyrion notes. He's drinking wine, which Tyrion notes and complains about. And he says, I always drink before I fight. He says, it might get you killed, and it may get me killed. And Oberyn says, today is not the day I die.
At least wear a helmet.
Yeah, at least wear a helmet. And then the mountain enters, heavy armor. Alaria stuns, says, are you going to fight that? He says, I am going to kill that.
Well, it's funny because she's so confident along with Oberyn throughout the entire thing, and she's like, yeah, he can drink the wine, he can do whatever he wants, and she's all confident, and then she sees the mountain, and she's like, whoa, wait a minute, you didn't tell me that's what you were fighting.
Yes.
Mistake.
Yes. So he moves out into the ring, and she calls to him and says, don't leave me alone in this world, and he responds, never.
Yeah, you got poor kid.
Yeah, he goes out there, does a lot of spinning, a lot of twirls. Mountain's not real impressed. And then, Oberyn goes into his Inigo Montoya. You raped my sister, you murdered her, you killed her children, prepare to die. Yes. But, yeah. So they bounce around. He continues, goading him, saying, you raped her and you murdered her. Is winning the fight, knocks him down, stabs him a couple times, gets him in the back of the leg, stabs him really nice through the chest, but wants to hear him admit that he killed and raped his sister. Then knocks him down, and just as he said earlier about if you're on the ground, or all men are all the same size if they're on the ground. And he does what he does to him.
I would argue that men are not all the same size on the ground, because one of them was big enough to pick up the other one-handed.
Yeah. Punch him in the face and bust his teeth.
Damn that punch.
Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously this is a horrifying turn of events, both in the book and in the show, and so I thought the show did an excellent job at depicting pretty much how I felt about it in the books, which is this progression, which this is one of my favorite things in any kind of dramatic fiction is this idea of tension about, like, is something going to go your way or not? And then you think it does, you start getting relieved, and then only have kind of a slow burn realization, oh, wait, no, it's really not okay. It's really not okay at all. And I love that anytime any show or movie does that kind of a dynamic, it just really works on me somehow. But this idea, first of all, that Oberyn's crucial fault here was so well established. You know what I mean? It's like we believe 100% why he would do what he did, and yet we can also at the same time realize how disastrous it is even before it goes so horribly wrong, because we're cheering as he gets Mountain on the ground, but then when he doesn't finish him and he's still marching around him and he's still yelling about it, and now he's demanding that who gave you the order? You're starting to go,
oh yeah,
oh, Oberyn, don't screw this up. Oh God, oh no, oh no. Yeah. And then it's so much worse even than you're expecting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, once you got to the point, I mean, if you hadn't read the books, I mean, once he got to the point and he started pointing his spear up to Tywin and saying, who gave you the orders, you understood. It's not just about revenge.
Yeah.
It is his need to, to prove that the Lannisters were the cause of this, not just this crazy, Mountain and soldier going against orders. And, that once you saw that, even if you hadn't seen or read the books, you were hopefully scared for Oberyn at that point.
Yeah.
It is not just wine that clouded his mind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He did get his confession, though, although he may have been screaming too loud to hear it.
Yeah.
And
I don't know who heard
the
it.
Mountain corrected him, too.
Yeah.
The Mountain corrected him. I killed your children, then I raped your wife, or your sister, or her children. Your sister. Yeah. And then I did this.
And then I smashed her head in like this. So.
Yeah.
But were you surprised at the outcome? Like, how did you think the scene was going to end?
It certainly, in the fight, it certainly felt like it was too easy. It was going too easy. Because the Mountain is such an imposing figure and such a great combatant and all that, so it definitely felt like it was going too easy. I don't know what I expected. I wanted Oberyn to win, but I really had no clue. To me, it really was 50-50 because Tyrion's already done this before, and Trial by Combat worked the first time, so George doesn't like to be predictable, and so yeah, I had no clue which way it would go, but it seemed like it was too easy.
I had a lot of Just Show viewers tell me in the last couple days, they were like, oh, I knew exactly how that was going to wind up, and I was like, really? Really? You knew exactly?
I think what they're probably saying is all of the many foreshadowing clues that kept piling up as the scene progressed, leading up to the point where he's clearly not finishing off the mountain and walking around and ranting. Like, at that point, I think it was very much supposed to be oh God, he's going to blow this. He's going to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're set up we're given like 15-20 seconds of realizing that's almost certainly what's about to happen, and yet we're hoping so much that it won't.
Yeah.
And then it does, and it's even so much worse than we could have imagined.
Totally.
I read the books and I was hoping it would turn out differently. I'm like,
yeah. Oh man, because one brief note, my talking about Survivor and talking about stuff co-host Mike Mayteen, he and I discuss the show sometimes. He's also he has not read the books, and I got just a one-line text from him after this episode. It was just fucking Game of Thrones.
That's all you need.
Yeah.
Sheriff Bullock says, personally, I found this to be the most upsetting in the series so far. In a series of mostly upsetting scenes, I was not okay with this.
Yeah.
I don't know if he was specifically meaning the over the top violence or the how Oberyn died or whatever.
I suspect it's kind of. I mean, the gruesomeness. It's one thing if it's happening to some some random guy that we don't care about, but setting up the character to be so awesome and then having it go so wrong and then being so brutal, it's pretty upsetting. I tend to agree. I feel like of all the big moments that they've shown on the screen, even the ones that have been brutal, I mean, this one's right up there to me with stabbing Talissa in the belly during the Red Wedding. Like, I feel like those are the two that have been the most upsetting to me in the show so far.
Yeah.
I was unprepared for the show to go as gross as it did in this episode.
Yeah, I figured they would, because I think something Viv has brought up in the past is they have to one-up themselves, you know, with how violent something is.
Plus, they destroyed that beautiful face.
Like, this was the beautiful face being destroyed. I mean, one of the things that, like you're saying, that you even reading the book, you hoped it would be different. Like the only time that ever came was like Ned getting his head chopped off. I was like, are they going to change? Are they going to change it? They're going to save him somehow. Here, I was sort of just resigned to the fact that it was going to happen, but the fact that they did it in the way that they did it was, you know, pretty crazy.
So Sheriff Bullock clarifies too, saying Oberyn dying, I guess, was the upsetting aspect of it. And
yes.
Too awesome a character and too awesome an actor to lose. And I agree 100%. I mean, well, except in the sense that, I mean, you know, having read the books, I always knew this was going to happen. And so I want to just say too, to all of you people who have not read the books, the pain of watching how awesome Oberyn has been all season, knowing how it's going to turn out, was really hard, and you guys don't fully understand.
I bet, yeah.
But
you don't know our pain, man.
Yeah. Anyway, though, but I agree, completely awesome. And one saving grace I will say about this, especially for all of you people who really like Oberyn, is they've had some casting news about the next season, and it looks like we are going to see more of Dorne, including the Sand Snakes. Who are Oberyn's daughters, who are also awesome. And so especially given that the whole Dorne section, a lot of people have talked about how all the stuff in Dorne could almost just be left out without affecting the rest of the plot that we've seen so far very much. But I was really hoping that they wouldn't, because I like it and it's awesome. And so apparently they are not going to leave that stuff out, and I'm very glad to hear that. So now that they've established how awesome this guy from Dorne is, we'll get to go see more awesome people from Dorne.
Yeah, and I would say that might have been a possible occurrence as far as things being left out, but that was before the speeding up of certain plot lines this season. I think they definitely needed to have that, whether it's next season or what have you. Because
they can't afford to leave out huge chunks, not if they're already worried about overtaking Martin's books.
Right. Just from the chat, Sheriff Bullock says, someone else's suggestion, watch Game of Thrones in reverse and all your favorite characters come back to life. So, yeah.
That's like the meme about, if you watch Godzilla backwards, it's about a benevolent lizard rebuilding a city and then moonwalking into the ocean.
Yes. Mike Macaulay agrees with my take on the Inigo Montoya. Towards the end of the battle, when Oberyn was winning and kept chanting about his sister, all I kept hearing in my head was, my name is Inigo Montoya, you killed my father, prepare to die.
Now here's a horrifying thought. Imagine that scene from Princess Bride.
Stop! Don't even say it.
No.
Don't even say it.
Okay, I'll go there, but I don't even.
You don't get to do that, man.
Count Rugen will never be able to do that.
And I'm out.
I am curious if what happens to the Mountain from here on, because he looked pretty fucked up, and since Dorne is known for poison, I don't know if it would have poisoned his place.
Nutty is covering her mouth, which is her sign of something. Bouncing on the ball, and
certainly left unresolved at the end of this episode.
Yes, there should be more, and
so I
will not say anything other than that.
I've had a couple of people ask me this, so just in case anybody's not clear, the result of the battle is that Oberyn died first, therefore Tyrion loses. It's that simple. So it doesn't matter whether.
Doesn't matter if the mountain dies.
So
2
I
minutes
had
later
heard
or 2
to a
days
couple
later.
of people. I had heard from a couple of people who were asking me like, well, if the mountain dies too, do they have to do it again or something like that? And I was like, nope. It is a, they have not carried out the sentence yet, and yet the whole rules of the trial by combat thing are pretty clear. Oberyn died first. That means Tyrion loses, and the sentence is death. That's the rules.
But maybe his heart is still beating.
Yeah. You almost kind of hope not at this point.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Sheriff Bullock says, I also love Dorne. I vacation in Dorne. I have a season pass to the Water Gardens.
That would be awesome. Can I come with you sometime?
Yeah, can I come too? I want to go
Better
to the
than Busch Gardens,
They have
I'm
a lazy
sure.
river.
Probably.
So,
That just this is
Go
a
ahead.
total random aside, but that just totally gave me really positive flashback memories to a time that I went with my brother to a Disney World water park where we both got drunk off of mini bottles in the locker rooms before going out to do water slides. Obviously, we're in separate locker rooms, but we bought the bottles together, each snuck them in on our own, and water slides while drunk are pretty great.
I'll have to trust you on that, and I agree. It probably would be. Although I did drunk not whitewater rafting, but sort of tubing on this river, and then was so drunk at the end and floating on the river, and you have no sort of idea of like how unbalanced you are when you get out of a tube and get onto the shore. And I immediately fell down and like tore my knee, and my knee was messed up for like a month.
Wow.
But,
Yeah, so
yeah.
maybe other people
Yeah.
shouldn't do it. Safety tip, kids don't drink in water slide.
yes.
Okay? All right.
And don't watch this show because we're filthy people.
Okay.
So,
So-
just before we go on, this is from the meme roundup I posted this morning. There is a map of the United States, and it tells you what your bastard name would be. And I was just curious what everyone's bastard name would be. Mine would be Shore.
I'm Silicon.
Gosh. I
I put a link into the chat, so you should be able
Yeah.
to click on it. I don't
mine
know where
is-
everybody was born.
Mine
I
would
might-
be grain, but I call bullshit because I was near the mountains. There's no way it would be grain. It would be stone or something like that.
Yeah, I'm sure as well.
And Viv would be oil.
Yeah.
Nice. Are you Silicon, Chooch?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
There we go.
Um,
And of course, there's no Canada, so I just assume all of Canada is snow.
Yeah, I
There
think
you
The
go.
wall.
that's
I mean,
Yeah.
okay, was
you're an other.
Craster.
Wait, they have
Wildling.
bastards in Canada?
no, they would
Nope.
never.
We're free
Okay,
folk.
here's a question
Too
for
polite to let something like that happen.
here's a question for everybody. Was anybody disappointed in the actual trial by combat? Not the end of it, but just the actual battle and the fight and the.
Are you asking
Choreography.
because you were?
I was a little.
Oh,
I
okay.
wasn't. I enjoyed it thoroughly.
I
I
enjoyed it, but I
Yeah.
thought that it was a little bit too much quick cutting, and sort of they had like when Oberyn was like doing his twirls and stuff, like they had like the camera shifts and like it was almost like just repeating more than just the times he was doing it. I thought they sort of lost a little bit just the way that I thought that Bronn's battle with trial by combat, where it sort of mirrors this with the idea of man in light armor, if he's fast enough, can do things against someone with heavy armor. And I thought that was portrayed a little bit better in his fight, whereas they were concentrating a little more on Oberyn's twirly stuff and going on. I just thought that it was not quite as momentous as the build up, rather than some of the other stuff. But I enjoyed it.
Oberyn's all about the flash, though. I mean,
Yeah, he's a
that's
poet.
exactly what he would do. I mean, Bronn was very pragmatic about it. It's like, I am doing this because I hope I'm going to get some money out of it. I know I can beat this guy. I just have to make sure that I don't misstep or make any mistakes, so I'm being careful, and I'm letting this guy tire himself out. Oberyn, it's all about the show. He's showing off for the crowd before he even starts fighting. He's yelling about this accusation the whole time. in his mind, it's not. He doesn't think he has to be careful. He thinks he's got this in the bag, and he's also going to get his revenge too.
Yeah.
I mean, so I think it's very different attitudes going in.
And I also thought that some of the cutting and different things was to hide the fact that it was, a stunt fighter and, the superimposed face, CGI face. Yeah. Yes, but
You mean Pedro Pascal can't really do that? That's
I think he can do
disappointing.
some of it, but he's not Ray Park from yeah. So yes, Darth Maul. I've lost my. I had the actor's name. I couldn't remember the character name. But no, I mean, I liked it. I liked the fight. I just thought that for the build-up and the idea that this was the biggest thing ever, that it was more about the violent end rather than the actual pulling off the battle itself. But anyway, so that was the episode. Did anybody have any last comments before giving our ratings?
I will miss Oberyn.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, too,
For our homie.
just to kind of I said this in kind of a different way earlier, but as many huge plot development things happen in Book 3, and, we have to remember that the TV show's version goes all the way through the whole of last season, and this season is all stuff happening in Book 3, so just remember, it's like everything, like there's all the stuff that leads up, and then the Red Wedding, and then all of the other stuff that's happened this season was just like one after another in the books. But this one, maybe it's just because of how great Oberyn is, was upsetting in almost a way that the others weren't even for me. So this definitely was one of the most upsetting things in the books for me. I think even more so than the Red Wedding. Like, the Red Wedding was shocking,
Yeah.
but not upsetting in quite the same way. I think maybe part of it's just because it's obviously Oberyn's pretty cool, but also how tied in Tyrion's fate is to it, to what's going on here. And so just all of that together is just profoundly upsetting, and I thought the show handled that really, really well, to the point where I think it's interesting to discuss, because a lot of people's reaction has been to just say, well, okay, what's the deal with this show, this story, the books? Is the lesson we're supposed to just take here that you should never root for anybody because George R.R. Martin will kill them? I feel like it's not quite that. I feel like that's not actually what... I feel like it's not what the real message is, because I feel like the lesson is really one of pragmatism. Because as awesome as Oberyn was, it's like that old saying of, like, if you seek revenge, dig 2 graves.
Yep.
Right? One for your enemy and one for yourself. And that was absolutely... Like, he had it won.
Yeah.
And, not that Tyrion had tons of great champions to choose from, but it just illustrates the idea that it's one thing to say, oh, our purposes are aligned, but they weren't really, because Oberyn didn't care about saving Tyrion. He cared about getting to kill the Mountain and make Tywin mad. And because his objective was not the same, he ended up screwing over both of them. And Oberyn was great, but one of the things that made him so great was this passionate desire for revenge he had, and yet ultimately that's what led to his downfall, versus the idea that a more pragmatic character, like, say, Bronn was, probably actually gets most of what he wants, as opposed to someone who's that driven by emotion.
Right. I like that. So, ratings.
Ratings, yes.
I did want to say Sheriff Baratheon. Sheriff Bullock says, my Thrones merchandise may identify me as Baratheon, but I was House Martell this week. We were all House Martell.
Oh,
so yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
I think
this
so.
week. Yes, we are all House Martell. So ratings, Chooch. What do you think?
I'm gonna go. I'm gonna give it 9.5 out of 10 as an overall. In the form of 9.5 of Auburn's teeth on the floor.
Teeth.
Oh.
I like teeth. Very good. Christiana.
I was not able to actually settle on one. What I'll go ahead and do in the interest of continuing to double down on my enthusiasm earlier, I'm going to say 10 out of Sansa's new dress is a 10.
Wow.
10 out of 10 Sansa's new dresses. Or
Nice.
something like that.
Just yeah.
Nutty.
And I'm going to have to give it a 9.5 melon bald eyes out of 10.
Melon bald eyes. Well, jeez. Ouch. Ouch. Yeah, I'm gonna go. Did anybody do Beatles? I guess I'm gonna have to do Beatles. Yeah, so I'm going 6 out of 10.
I
Crushed
approve of that
Beatles.
one. That is one of the other ones I was considering.
Yeah, I had 950 beetle husks.
Yeah.
6 out of 10?
Yeah. I mean, I was disappointed with the battle. I thought they spent too much time with the Tyrion scene. That I thought I wanted other things to happen in the episode prior to the combat. I thought some of the scenes we talked about earlier, the awkward writing, I didn't enjoy it as much as, and maybe it's just the melancholy of knowing that Oberyn was going to die and that it happened, and it just made me so sad I couldn't give it a better score.
It's okay. You're wrong, but it's fine.
Do we have a Viv rating?
No, I don't. She's hoping to talk about it a little bit at the beginning of the next show.
Oh,
Sure, absolutely.
I can only imagine that. I mean, at least. I mean, I think it's marginally a benefit in this case that she had read the books and knew what was going to happen, but I can only imagine that she found it very upsetting just based on.
Yeah. She may actually agree with Sheriff Bullock, who was, I loved this episode, but I hated this episode. 9 out of 10. Devastated Sheriff Bullock's crying in the corner. Aww. And Mike Macaulay, 10 out of 10. Crushed melons, probably in my top 5 episodes of the series.
Wow, that's high
Very
praise.
good.
So we have a cast average of 88% for this episode.
Yeah, you can throw mine out. Y'all are all.
Well, no.
In fact, you should probably do that anyway. You should probably just have the cast average and then my average.
No, we can't pick the data. If this is going to be scientific, we need to use your actual rating.
No, I'm just saying,
now,
looking at the average
if you are feeling
overall.
guilty now, if you're feeling guilty and reconsidering your opinion.
No, his score is in. I don't change it.
The dress. First of all, the dress lost a point right there. No.
And it's not PG's lowest rating for this season, so.
It's not. What was my lowest?
Your lowest rating was episode 4, which is Oathkeeper, and you gave that a 5.5.
Wow, I don't remember why, but
you gave Breaker of Chains a 6 out of 10 as well.
Okay. I know the last 3 I was up around 9, 8, 9, 9.5 maybe. Did I do a 9.5?
Yes, you did.
For the last
episode
one?
was a 9, and the episode before that was 9.5.
Yep.
And you did another 9.5 for episode 2.
I wanted to get people's opinions on a couple news items.
Sure.
Real quick.
Okay.
So one was that George's editor intimated there might be an 8th book.
I think that's just talk.
Well, he has spoken. He has replied to that just to say, right now there is not a plan for an 8th book. However, when he started, there was only plans for 3 books, and so we all know what happened from there. So he's basically not saying it's impossible that there could ever be an 8th book, but he did say he is not now planning to have an 8th book. It's now planning to still be 7, but he still hasn't written book 7 yet. So He's still trying to get through book 6, and so it's still plenty of time to decide to make it 8, even though the implication that it was decided is he basically said, no, that's not true.
So he did say basically it's just talk at this point.
Yeah.
The headline was, editor let slip or whatever.
Well, yeah.
But then when I read the comments, it was really more just promo for their Atlas thing. Because I realized, I kept saying 7 books for 7 kingdoms, but they're really 8 kingdoms.
See, the thing is, it's definitely...
It's pretty innocuous.
I think it was definitely calculated because they get 2 cycles, 2 news cycles out of it. The agent says this, and everybody goes, "Oh my God, 8 books! Oh my God, what are we gonna do? Oh, by the way, the Atlas thing, right?" And then George gets to come out and basically say, "Chill, everybody." I mean, maybe, but oh, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely seemed calculated to me.
Now, that said, the Atlas does look cool.
Yeah.
The other piece of news was Gwendolyn Christie, played Brienne,
yes.
cast in the new Star Wars movie.
Yep.
I saw that.
I was very happy to hear.
I'll watch her in anything.
I like her, although at least at present, I am not yet feeling super excited about the Star Wars movie. I may get there when it's closer, but I am not following all the little pre-production stuff.
Neither was I really, and all the other casting news,
Guardians of the Galaxy, on the other hand, I'm super pumped for that one.
Yeah.
Now, like I said, there's still time. Star Wars is a ways off. I might get excited for it once we start, knowing a little more actual stuff about it instead of, oh, Carrie Fisher tweeted from Egypt, therefore that must mean that they're filming in Egypt.
Scotland, yeah. They must be in Scotland.
Scotland, you're right. It was Scotland, but yeah.
I saw the headline. I didn't click the link because I am purposefully avoiding Star Wars news for that very reason, because I want to be able to judge it on its own merits. And I've expressed this before, why I try not to read about casting news and things like that ahead of time, because I just feel like with all the media that's out there at our fingertips, you can become oversaturated with a project before you watch it and then get disappointed. Yeah. So like Days of Future Past X-Men, which we all went to see at Balticon, I looked at nothing. I saw that teaser bit at the end of the Wolverine, and I looked at nothing except when it was opening, because I did not want to have any preconceived ideas or anything, and I was very pleasantly surprised.
Yes. Actually, I already removed it. I don't know if it was Sheriff Bullock or Mike put in a link to a "My name is Oberyn Martell. You killed my sister. Prepare to die" T-shirt, which I may own before.
That was Sheriff Bullock posted that link.
I was very happy.
Well done.
That was very good. Yeah.
And the last bit was not really news, but people should do a search for Seth Rogen and Snoop Dogg recap game.
Oh yeah,
yes.
that was good.
Talk about episode 7.
That was good.
It's so funny. It is hilarious.
I was surprised at how on the ball Snoop was about everything. Seth would gloss over things, and he's like, "No, this is what happened. Let me tell you, this is what happened."
Yep.
Well, I mean, he's a really smart guy. Sometimes that he has that whole persona that he cultivates, right? That's a little more. I was going to say loosey-goosey, but that doesn't sound quite right.
Not in touch persona, but he really is. Yeah. I was just surprised that he was such a fan. I'm like, and he said something about how he's reading the books too. So, I just want to sit down with Snoop and say, "All right, Snoop, tell me your theories."
Yeah. But the particular discussion about the only black actors are the Unsullied is hilarious. So.
Yeah.
Every black actor is missing their junk.
The Dornishmen are supposed to be black, by the way.
His reasoning was hilarious.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So yes, go search that up and watch. So that's our show for tonight. Next time we will have a contest for the next episode. We did not have one for this. So there'll be a survey up on the specficmedia.com site tomorrow. The question will be for next episode. Looks like there's going to be some fighting. So I think might as well make my life next week hell. We'll do body counts, wildlings
Oh my god.
versus Brothers at the Wall. So
Maybe to make it a little simpler, we could just make it spread. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, who's gonna lose
specific
more,
number.
wildlings or
Yeah. who more on-screen deaths, either more crows dead or more wildlings dead, and just you can maybe just do a spread. I guess that still makes you have to count, but you know.
Like, nobody's gonna
no,
sit there and
I want
argue if you were
no,
one
no,
off.
no. I want specific numbers because obviously 100,000 to 100. Hopefully, there will be more wildling deaths than wall deaths, but you know.
Unless the battle's just over really fast.
Yeah.
Unless Jon Snow gets conked on the head, and then we learn about the fallout afterwards.
Oh.
Oh, poor Tyrion. Yes. So, yeah, I want numbers, so we'll put that out there. So, so look for that tomorrow, and I guess that's it. We'll see you next time on Beyond the Wall. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Hey.
Bye.